Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming out this morning. We are all gathered here today to stand in support of and with State Representative Corey Paris. Corey is facing something that nobody should ever have to face, and the governor and I want to condemn the vile, racist harassment and threats that have been made to State Representative Paris and his family members. Let's be really clear. Corey did something that every elected official strives to do, and that is share necessary information with his constituents. That's what he was elected to do. He was elected to provide assistance to his constituents and support his community, and that's what he did. He did not dox federal agents or do anything to put federal agents at risk. On the flip side, in the name of protecting federal agents, these agencies are now using their own considerable power, the power of the federal government, to intimidate Corey and validate misinformation that extremist groups are putting out there. And those federal agencies have put Corey and his family at risk. This current administration's hate-filled agenda has bred a very toxic environment that's just disgusting and downright dangerous. The president has sought to spew hate and division and encourage the people of our country to treat our neighbors and those who are new to this country with disrespect. He wants us to believe that elected officials are not human beings. Corey, just like the rest of us standing here today, entered this line of work because he just wanted to help his community. And this incident is particularly disturbing in light of what happened in June when two Minnesota lawmakers and their spouses were targeted by a shooter. Minnesota State Representative Melissa Portman was assassinated, and her husband Mark was killed, and they were killed right in their own home. State Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette were also shot in their home and thankfully have recovered. Another Arizona State Senator, Annalise Ortiz, was also targeted in a similar way to Representative Paris. Sadly, our social media has just emboldened extremists and given them an opportunity to spew hate and division with anonymity. But this rhetoric is very dangerous, and there are real-life consequences. Connecticut has always been a state that has welcomed people who are new to our country and who make our state the vibrant place that it is. As the governor said, we pride ourselves on being a state that looks out for our neighbors and cares about the safety of everyone in our communities. Corey has been a proud representative of these values, and we're here today to stand and support him. We're also here today to call on ICE to stop aiding and abetting extremist groups and threatening our elected officials.
Let me first thank the Lieutenant Governor and Governor Lamont for bringing us together and this show of support, which I think speaks volumes. You know the old saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words. This picture says to Connecticut and the country, Corey, we are with you. We have your back. You are not alone, because every one of us could have been the recipient of those kinds of threats. In fact, a number of us have been, and it is a reflection of not just the social media cesspool of hatred, but also of an administration that has done nothing to discourage or deter these kinds of threats or intimidation. On the contrary, this administration has in fact condoned, encouraged, and spawned many of these violent threats. But let me come right to the point. Corey Parris did nothing wrong. He did nothing illegal. He did nothing that would warrant an official agency of the United States government to say, charge him, which is what ICE did when it reposted the libs of TikTok X posting. Charge him. That is the language of a totalitarian agency out of control, a rogue instrument of law enforcement that has to be contained. Later today, or in the next few days, I will be formally announcing an investigation by the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigation. I'm not going to go into the details now. I'm the ranking member of the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigation, and this kind of action well warrants a congressional inquiry that I will be announcing. The fact that ICE reposted, charge him, is only one incident among many that have been reported of this agency exceeding its power, using unwarranted and excessive force, unidentified and unmarked agents wearing masks, seizing people who may be in this country completely lawfully, doing nothing wrong, detaining them. I visited one in a detention facility in Plymouth just days ago, and we need an official congressional inquiry that will uncover who is responsible and who should be held accountable for this incident, but also for the pattern and practice of potentially violating our laws. And just so that folks understand what's at stake here, government officials exceeding their authority, using excessive force, illegally detaining people is a violation of federal law. And it can result in liability for those federal agencies and for the United States of America in the millions of dollars if they are held accountable. But there are also potential criminal penalties if laws are broken. So today we demonstrate our unity. I want to commend our state law enforcement, which is investigating these threats. Our state police, the Stanford police, are cooperating with the FBI in investigating the threats to Corey Parris from unidentified private sources. But the public agencies have to be held accountable as well. And I am also gratified that at least in the public response to these threats, there has been bipartisan condemnation. There should be nothing partisan about our reaction to these incidents. They are un-American, they are unacceptable and intolerable in the Constitution state or any other state in America. And so I'm proud to stand with my colleagues today, and I will continue to work with you. I want to thank every single one of you for being here today, because let's be very clear, every one of these government officials who stands today in public light is potentially a target of these same kinds of right-wing extremist threats. They have no place in America. And the people of Connecticut, I am sure, are united in their condemnation of them. Thank you.
The last 3 days I've had it's not a pleasure, but it's always a pleasure to be with Corey. The pleasure of speaking with Corey in person and being on the phone with him. And that's the last few days, but for the last decade, Corey has been someone who's an important part of my life. We joke often that I dragged him into this. That's not quite true, but I did encourage him a lot along the way. And the reason for that was because Corey has an ability to make things clear to folks, to speak in a way that articulates the issues in such a way that we understand them, whether we began with that understanding or not. What's happening here is an attempt to get a person like Corey to stop using those talents for the benefit of his constituents. And that's something we can't stand for. Look, many of us, some of us have, but many of us have not been through what Corey is going through. It is a life-altering event. It makes you look at the work that you're doing in a way that you've never looked at it before. And for what? Because as was said, Corey did not do the things that he was accused of doing. He did not do the things he was accused of doing by people who have accused him of that in the retweeting of that post thousands, tens of thousands of times. And the viewing of it, perhaps hundreds of thousands of times. And then, on top of all of that, a government agency that has responsibility besides the letter of what it is to do. All government agencies have to be concerned with the safety of people. Chooses to put their stamp on a lie. Think about that. An agency that we know has been operating in ways, rogue is a nice word. We don't have secret police in the United States of America, or do we? And when we see an agency functioning like that, it's incumbent upon all of us, every single one of us who's standing up here, to speak, to make sure that our constituents know, because it's not the people who you think are being affected by the actions of ICE, it's all of us that are affected by the actions they take. There is no progress if we lose ourselves along the way. And I think too many of us have lost ourselves. And we made this country a much less safe country. And so we have to stand here and be visible in ways that apparently ICE doesn't want to be, show our faces, to say that not only Corey, but all of us have a right to speak and will continue to speak. And I just want to say to Corey, I appreciate what you've done. And end with his own words, let us all look out for each other. Thank you.
Today, we stand here as the legislative brothers and sisters of Representative Harris. And we stand here having our own individual relationships with him. He is one of the most well-respected members of either chamber. And though we do not have all of our colleagues here today, and I would include our Republican colleagues in that, many of our Republican colleagues are standing with us as well as the rest of our Democratic caucus. You know, I have known Corey now for nearly a decade myself. He is one of the most honorable people that I have ever met in my life, and we are certainly lucky to have him elected in Connecticut. He is an empathetic leader. He embodies integrity. He is a leader who fights for his constituents, who fights for the people who live in his district. And what he did when he posted that post about the fact that ICE was in Stamford, he was acknowledging the fact that people are terrified of being disappeared from our streets as they have been across the country each and every day since this administration took office. You know, some people may not believe that everyone is entitled to that protection and that due process, but it is in the Constitution, and in the Constitution it says all persons. It does not say all citizens, it says all persons. And that was his thought when he put out what honestly was a very generic post about caring for your neighbors and keeping an eye out and being vigilant. And there, even as there is a misunderstanding of the word dox, there appears to be a misunderstanding of the word vigilant, in which we are meant to be watchful, as we are meant to care for one another in that watchfulness. And he is a man of great faith, so I know that there are many passages in which he would say that we are meant to be one another's caregivers and caretakers and keepers. You know, if you had replaced the word ICE in that post with Hurricane Elena, it wouldn't have even drawn attention, right? We had other colleagues who are standing with us and not standing with us who made even stronger statements against ICE this week. But do not forget that he serves as a black man in this country. And that is a different way to serve than many of us who stand here today, including myself. They very specifically in that tweet put a photo of him next to what he said. It has been retweeted 90,000 times, it has been seen hundreds of thousands of times, and not only did ICE retweet it and say charge him, they specifically tagged the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice is supposed to be blind, it's supposed to be for all of us. It is supposed to be equal. And that is not what we are seeing each and every day, and that is certainly not what we know our Representative Paris to be. He is one of the most noble servants we have, but it is exactly this kind of behavior and these kind of threats that drive noble people out of this profession, as many of us are trying to bring back the integrity that this profession deserves and that the people who elect us deserve. Truthfully, we should not be at a press conference today defending our colleague, but this administration has targeted the state legislature who did no wrong, as Senator Blumenthal said, who broke no laws, and he stands up for the people who voted for him, the people who did not vote for him, and the people who are not yet able to vote for him. We know when we are elected that we'll be criticized, but our name on the ballot does not mean that you have the right to threaten us, to threaten our families, to threaten family members in other states the way that Representative Paris has experienced. And I will just say, because I'm one of the few people that heard the most disgusting phone call I will ever hear in my entire life. Some of you got to hear a clip on WFSB, and honestly, I wish they hadn't bleeped it out because you would have understood the way in which the words were spoken, the disgust that this person had for Representative Paris and his representation, and frankly, the vile way in which he not only spoke about Representative Paris, but about the person who answered the phone, and thinking that it might have been his aide. We have decided as a state that we're going to protect immigrants, and I want to be clear in my final thoughts that when you come for one of us, you come for all of us, every single person that's standing up here. And if you think we aren't prepared, and if you think we don't have a plan, you are sorely mistaken. So the federal government can choose to do what they want to do, but we, me and mine, we will be standing for the people of Connecticut, regardless of their immigration status, regardless of their race, their religion, their creed. Because that is what we've been elected to do, and we will do it.
I am thankful, and I know all of our members are thankful, that Corey Paris is a member of the BPRC and our brother. I remember Saturday morning being disgusted when Senator Winfield had shared with our caucus what was happening with Corey. When I first saw it, actually, I saw it thinking that it was somebody else. I just kind of read through it, and then when I noticed it was Corey, there was just this disgust and dejection that came upon me, because it's somebody who leads with integrity, somebody who stands in these very chambers that we're having some of these press conferences in, and stands up for the least of us, stands up for his constituents who are always looking for more, looking to make sure they are being cared for. But that disgust, there's a little dichotomy going on with me, because it changed, it didn't change, it's still there, but it was met with a little bit of thankfulness. I'm first of all thankful for my caucus. We all got together this week, very early in the week, and we spoke with Corey. We spoke with our Capitol Police, who are doing a great job of being conduits between state police and the Stamford PD to make sure that Corey is protected, him and his family. We have made sure that we came together, and I want to thank Corey himself, because Corey came to us and was very open and honest about how he wanted to be represented, how he wanted to make sure he was kept safe, and we've had a very open communication about how to do things going forward. But if you're watching this and you're in the state of Connecticut, you should be thankful. You should be thankful that you're in a state where there is a representative like a Corey Paris, where there's somebody who's going to stand up for you when you're in these dire situations, no matter who is standing on the other side. He did this knowing that this could happen, and obviously this is a situation that we all hoped never would, but it did. And now we're standing here, and the thankfulness goes also to all the members that are standing behind me. They know that Corey doesn't deserve any of this. Corey did nothing wrong. I'm going to say it again, because everybody should say it when they get up here. Corey did nothing wrong. All he did was talk to his constituents about what they could look out for in the street, what could happen to them and making sure they were staying safe, because he took an oath to do. He put his right hand in the air, his left hand in the Bible, and he made sure he was looking out for all those who live in his district, and that is exactly what he was doing. So while we're standing here strong, we're standing here vigilant, I want to say thank you, Corey Parris, for doing exactly what you swore an oath to do, and I know you will continue to do so.
You know, I shouldn't be standing here talking about this, right? It seems so obvious that none of the comments that you've heard today need to be stated by elected officials. And I'm actually quite sad to be standing here today. Sad for what Corey is going through, sad for what his family is going through, sad for what his community is going through, sad for any individual who's living in fear today because of their status here in this country, because of the color of their skin, because of the language that they speak. And that's really what makes this situation so dangerous in terms of the gross application of politics to policy in the way that President Trump has chosen to lead this country. And I'm really here to talk about accountability and who should be accountable. Certainly everyone here is accountable for how we engage and how we behave out there in the broader world, and how we utilize social media to communicate with the public. And there are certainly individuals, elected individuals in this state. I'm not going to name them because then I feel like I'm doxing them, but it certainly happens to be that all Democrats are up here, but there are some members of the House chamber who retweeted, who reshared, right, what ICE has put out there. And there needs to be accountability for that. Maybe it's my job to call them out. There are perhaps others who should be calling them out. Perhaps House Republican leadership should be calling out their own colleagues for engaging in very dangerous and reckless behavior by putting somebody's health, well-being, and safety at risk by amplifying something that we all know to not be true, right? And it might be, some might argue that ICE is just doing their job. They're just enforcing the law. They're going after individuals who are here in violation of some law. Okay, right? There could be a different approach to that. I think all of us would say that we should approach that differently. But what really makes this so important, not only for the individual who's being detained by some masked ICE agent, but maybe it's their child. And if you can't see the humanity in that person because they're not a citizen, understand that there's a humanity in that person because they have a child who's a citizen, or a family member who's a citizen, who are part of the fabric of our communities because they've been here for 20 and 30 years. But yet the president has chosen to grossly politicize citizenship and status and immigration status for very crass reasons. And this is an outcome of that, right? So when we talk about accountability, it begins with us as elected officials, but it also begins with all of you, right? Anybody who's sitting here in the audience or might view a clip of this on the news, think about how you engage on social media. Think about how you contribute to the decorum or the lack of discourse in our country right now, right? Because this is an all of us problem. Somebody alluded to that, right? When ICE goes after some individual, that impacts all of us, right? So you are all part of the solution, and you should be calling out people who are engaged in this behavior, regardless of whether you're Democrat or Republican, right? Because we're not talking about policy anymore, right? We're talking about raw politics and how it's being abused for political gain, and it's being abused to scare people, it's being abused to divide people. And the end outcome of that is one of our colleagues living in fear, one of our colleagues' family members living in fear. I mean, that's a really sad state of affairs for our state. It's a sad state of affairs for our country. And I hope that this event, us gathering to show support for Representative Parris, is a wake-up call. You shouldn't need one because we've had like 87 of them over the last 6 months. But here is yet another one because for some reason, all of us as citizens, regardless of whether we're elected officials or not, are participating in perpetuating what is a very bad situation by either remaining silent, and it's why Corey lent his voice to defending people who need defending. But use your voice to speak up, to hold your local elected official accountable who chooses to engage in this behavior, whether it's local, whether it's state, and certainly at the federal level. We don't have a problem with our federal delegation here, but certainly at the state and local level, there are some folks who need to be called out for what they're allowing to continue to happen by remaining silent, because when you do, all of us eventually are going to pay a price for this gross politicization of this current situation. So I wish Corey the best. I've had the opportunity to talk with him. This is not a situation he should find himself in because, as been alluded to over and over and over again, he's done nothing wrong. It's really time to hold people accountable, and that begins with all our elected officials and how they choose to engage in this process. Thank you.
It's unfortunate that we're here today talking about the unfortunate incidents around Representative Corey Parris. I too have had the opportunity to speak with him and communicate with him over the last couple of days. And, you know, the first time I spoke with him, he was more concerned about his family than he was with himself, which speaks volumes about the person that is Corey Paris. He was concerned about his family in other states where they may not enjoy some of the same support or protections that he has here in the state of Connecticut. And he's very concerned about what might happen to them, all of his family, and how they are going to be protected as well. Same with the House Majority Leader, my colleague Representative Rojas. It just begs the question of where are we right now as a country? Where are we? When we see federal agents storming through a courthouse in Stamford last week to pull people out who were in court for their moment of justice. When we see in Norwalk a man getting tased and hitting his head on pavement with somebody else, and his truck is just left there for his family to retrieve him, where he has to be taken to the hospital. That's done by our federal agents. Where are we as a country that we have allowed this? That this is being allowed by members of Congress, by the administration, by our courts, who say equal justice under the law. Where we have said many times we have a 14th Amendment that provides equal protection under the law. And you have a representative who is merely trying to present a message to his constituents to say, be vigilant, be careful, and be on the lookout for anything that may not seem normal. That is not something that rises to the level of a federal agency suggesting that it should go to the Justice Department for prosecution. Want to talk about weaponization of a federal agency? We're seeing the weaponization of federal agencies right here in our own state. It's important for us as elected officials, because as Senator Winfield said and others, we have all been on that side where we have seen threats and we have received threats. We have seen our colleagues assassinated this year. We understand and we know the dangers of elective office these days, where we should be fighting about ideas, not worrying about if bullets are going to be coming our way. We need to be making sure we are taking care of each other. We also need to make sure that we're asking members of our community to join us, to stand with Corey Paris, to stand with all of us, and demand, not in the hundreds, but in the thousands, in the tens of thousands, that we take back our democracy. That we do not let the National Guard continue to stay in Washington, D.C. That we don't have ICE agents who are tasing people and grabbing them off the streets who are in masks. That we don't continue to see this erosion of democracy that we've seen since January the 20th, that many of us have warned people about for months and months before that. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to take back our country. And we have this unfortunate incident with Representative Paris where we need to stand with him and he needs to know we have his back. We have his back. But we need to enlist all of our residents here in the state of Connecticut because, as was said, he's today, who's tomorrow? Who's the next person? And who's the next person who's not elected, who can't command the press, who can command a group of people like this behind me in support? This is a moment for us in this nation. This is a moment for us to stand up for what we believe in. This is a moment for us to speak up and speak out. Courage begets courage, and we need to make sure that we are fighting back hard. Because one thing a bully doesn't like when somebody punches back. And we have to make sure that we are doing exactly what we need to do to ensure that we have the safety and security of not only us as legislators, but also of the people that we represent across the state of Connecticut. So we have to continue to do that, and I thank our U.S. Senator, I thank our Lieutenant Governor, and all my colleagues behind me for standing up for what is right, standing up for this country, standing up for the rule of law. Lastly, I want to thank our State Capitol Police. They have done a great job. Chief Casanova, Lieutenant Wimble, without your support, I don't know where we would be today. So we appreciate you, your department, your staff. We appreciate our Connecticut State Police. But let's make sure that we rise up as Americans for America, because this is our time. History will judge us by what we do and what we say and how we act. That is how we make sure that we are supporting our friend, Representative Corey Davis. Thank you.
And as was said by many before me, I regret that we have to be here today. At the same time, I'm proud to stand here with many of my colleagues as we stand up for Corey Paris. I've had conversations with Corey, and as was mentioned, and in typical Corey fashion, his concern is not himself. It's about the folks around him. It's about his family and friends after receiving racist, violent threats. And I think as we talk about this, it is important for it to be known that I'm sure this resonates for all of us in public office. We are not in the typical political environment. We have seen colleagues gunned down in other states. We have seen elected officials arrested around the country for stepping up and doing their job. And that's exactly what Corey did in this situation, as he always does, representing his district, speaking up on behalf of those in his community. And it's what we all should be doing in an environment where we are seeing people snatched off the street by folks in mass, unmarked. That is not how government or law enforcement should work in this country. There should be due process. We are seeing an administration that does not care about laws, that does not care about the Constitution, and is ultimately driving an agenda that is incredibly detrimental to so many people in our community. I'm going to close with this, and I don't want to repeat what has been said over and over and over again, because I think everyone should understand a very clear distinction between right and wrong in this situation. But we are in an environment right now where you are seeing people capitulate. You are seeing elected officials, Republican members of Congress who will not speak up and use their voice to do their job and to speak up on behalf of their residents and the Constitution of the United States. You are seeing institutions, law firms that are capitulating to an administration, frankly, without pressure. You are seeing universities and healthcare institutions that are folding without real pressure. In Connecticut, we are not going to capitulate. We are not going to back down. We are not going to be silenced as this administration wants us to do. We are going to step up and do the work on behalf of the residents of the state of Connecticut and to make sure that we are protecting our people. And so I commend Corey for doing his job, for stepping up, for using his voice. We will stand with Corey today and every day moving forward, and we will stand together in unity as we all continue to go out there and do our job. And it is time for those institutions, it is time for those other elected officials who have backed down and not used their voice. It is time for residents across Connecticut and across the country to step up and use their voices as we make it very clear that we need to take our country back and that we are not going to tolerate an administration that goes rogue and violates laws and the Constitution moving forward. So thank you all for being here.
All of us would like to thank Chief Casanova and our state police and our Stamford police and Corey's staff for all of the work that they are doing to keep Representative Paris and his family safe. And I want to thank everyone for coming. We appreciate our media partners, and we'll take all on-topic questions.
I would imagine Representative Corey Paris is very disturbed. I imagine many of you have spoken with him. What is his concern now about being able to be in the state that he lives in and doing his job?
Gary, you want
like anybody in a situation like this, Corey does have concerns about his personal safety. But as you've heard over and over again, his major concern is about those around him. He's in conversation about what safety threat looks like. Clearly, I'm not going to talk about that here. But again, Corey is the type of person who recognizes that these kind of threats you take seriously. But in taking them seriously, it's not just about you, it's about those who are proximate to you. So I would say that is the disposition that Corey currently has.
And I think threats now are not idle threats sometimes, and we're seeing more and more action on some of these threats. Minnesota was one of them just this year. So these are not things to take lightly.
Yeah, and I'll just say this, I think many people know that I've had lots of threats, right, very credible threats. The difference here, I think, is multiple. One, this has continued in a way that the threats that I've experienced and many of us have experienced has not. And the other is the imprimatur of the federal agency. So there are folks who are going to see that and assume that because they have chosen to put their name on it, that the things that they are reading are legitimate. And that raises the level of concern that I have, that Corey has, that all of the people standing here have.
Yeah, and let's be very clear. Federal law enforcement has no business tolerating, condoning, accepting these kinds of threats. That's the reason the FBI is involved in helping to protect Corey Paris and any of us who receive these kinds of threats. Law enforcers who break the law will be held accountable. And if ICE is breaking the law, it should be held accountable. That's the reason that I will begin an investigation. And there should be a congressional inquiry. Permanent Subcommittee on Investigation should be looking into it, and so should the Inspector General of the Department of Homeland Security. If this agency is out of control, if it's tolerating rogue agents, encouraging extremist right-wing threats, it ought to be held accountable.
So you're saying quite blatantly that ICE fueled this fire?
The simple fact that it reposted Charge Him, which put an imprimatur of acceptability, in fact encouraged this kind of threat, certainly should be held accountable. Whoever at ICE is responsible for reposting Charge Him should be held accountable. I can't say it too many times, I know I'm repeating it.
And I would also add to what the senator is saying is that ICE tagged the Department of Justice. That is the federal agency that is charged with carrying out law enforcement and making sure that there is equal justice. And to have federal agencies that are sharing false, misleading, inaccurate, and extremist posts is absolutely unacceptable.
You know, I'm willing to bet if this kind of rogue lawless act were done by the state agency in Connecticut, it would be shut down. Whoever were responsible would be held accountable by our state legislators, but also by the governor. And the question for the President of the United States is, how are you tolerating this kind of rogue action? And it isn't only Corey Paris, as Bob Duff mentioned, just within the past few days. I don't know whether you've seen the video of what happened in Norwalk. A couple of individuals in a truck, taken out of the truck, thrown to the ground by unidentified masked agents, then tased, and they are now in a detention facility in Rhode Island, one of them with a very serious head injury as a result of that incident. We're going to include that kind of incident in the inquiry that we're beginning. It isn't just Corey Paris. It is well beyond what happened to him, and ICE has to be held accountable.
And I think whatever you stand on immigration, nothing, absolutely nothing justifies threatening somebody. Lieutenant Governor, did any of you
This
invite?
is not about immigration. That is a very important point. This is not about people who are criminals here illegally. It's not about undocumented people. Some of the victims of these practices are, in fact, United States citizens. As I mentioned, the Afghan refugees who have been detained are here legally under special immigration visas. They were our allies in Afghanistan. They were permitted to come here. Now they've been seized and detained. It is about fairness, due process, legal procedure that can make anyone in this country a victim.
Did you invite any Republicans to stand with you today?
This was a publicly noticed event in our LOB, and our Republican colleagues were welcome, and if any had come, I would have let them speak. Anything else? Thank you all so much for coming. We appreciate it.